Now, let me start with the attitude. At that time, not all elders were very keen on sending their children to Western schools because some people still experience in certain circles in the provinces, they feel that those children may be converted and they'll turn Christian or atheist or whatever. But, Bakau being an urban area close to Banjul, education came there much earlier. In fact, I understand Amity School was first established in Bakau when my dad was young. In fact, I think he told me once that he had been a student of Amity at that time. But the elders did not want the school there because of the fears, the anxieties I just outlined. So that is how it was moved to Makati at that time. Yes, Makati then. And chief's children were predominantly the ones sent there, and then later others joined. However, so people's attitude towards Western education was quite apprehensive at that time. But gradually, with enlightenment, and with obvious changes in the social changes, people began to see the value of sending their kids to school, particularly boys. At that time, girls were not. It was not quite common to see girls going to school, but now you can go to a school where the population is more female than male. So people's attitudes were quite skeptical at the time, but as you can see now, even though there are small pockets where some people feel that Western education is still not the best upbringing mode of their children, generally people send their kids to school because they've seen the value, and it is also recognized increasingly that you can go to a Western school and still be a very good Muslim, and you can attend a Quranic school, and yet your behavior is not commensurate with what you have learned. So that was the attitude. Now, coming to my personal experience, my father, understand, had hesitated in putting me to school, but an uncle of mine.
What was his reason? The same
who was his first cousin, yes, being the first son, and he was an imam, as I mentioned earlier on. And in fact, he has been a Quranic teacher, a carpenter, and a farmer. So I think he maybe thought he wanted me to follow his trade or occupation or whatever, profession. However, I understand an uncle of mine whose mother and his mother's same mother and father, first cousins, persuaded him to take me to a Western school or formal school, and he did. And in fact, he became very supportive. At that time, they didn't have much. He was just a carpenter and a farmer. And they paid them maybe 3 pence a day or something. So with that little income, he was able to pay school fees. It was not as much as now, but still, relatively, it was not easy for some of them because there were times when we had to stay at home or go to the farm to weed or whatever until they could afford to pay school fees. Sometimes for a month or 2 weeks, you could not attend school because school fees was not available. This happened. So, however, he sent me to school, and when he noticed that I was quite motivated to learn in Western setup, he encouraged me within his capacity to go to school. And
but the kind of trades he picked up, he was a farmer, he was a carpenter, at the same time he was an imam. Probably he couldn't have been worse off financially. He could have paid.
Well, relatively, he was not rich, but he was family-centered, if I may say it that way. And he really tried to support me, being the first child. And
family-centered, you mean?
He was very much interested, supported the family, the immediate family, and the extended
family. So there was too much responsibility.
So he was very, in fact, until he died, the whole of Bakau can testify that he's been very supportive. In fact, he became a highly respected person in the Bakau community. He only died in 2005.
2005, at what age?
2005. My dad was close to 100. With them, their age is very difficult to establish.
Actually. Now let's go into the early days of your education. Now you till primary, you went up to secondary school. For some obvious reasons, you couldn't attend high school then.
Exactly. At that time,
you
you
dropped
had
out.
infant 1, infant 2, standard 1, and so on, up to standard 7. So when you, at standard 4 or so, you could attempt what we call the common entrance. And if you did very well, you could then get a scholarship to go to Gambia High School, St. Augustine's and Armitage. At that time, those were the only 3 grammar schools, if you want to call them. Then if you miss that opportunity, you can go up to standard 7. And if you pass standard 7, you do well, you can then join St. Augustine's or Gambia High School or Armitage, and you start from Form 3 or Form 4. Form 4, you know what I mean? I had that opportunity too. I could have gone, I was actually offered to go to St. Augustine's High School. But my dad
from the brief that I read about you,
my dad could not
seems to suggest that you were an exceptionally intelligent intelligent child.
Well, I was quite well motivated to learn. I was interested.
Interested.
Books were my friends. But at the same time, I was an excellent sportsman. You'll be surprised.
At the same time.
At the same
but
time.
Your intention was to go beyond standard 7.
Yeah, my intention was at that time to go beyond standard 7. So when that was not feasible due to
you stopped at standard 7.
I stopped at standard 7, but I continued to do O levels privately. So I had 4
O levels.
And at the same time, and after standard 7, when I could not go to St. Augustine's, I decided to go and teach. So I applied for unqualified teaching position, and I was taken to Badibu, your area. So I was there as an unqualified teacher for 6 months. Then I was transferred to Tuje Yereng.
Did they show you that they were kind of your master?
Oh yeah, they were. They really respected their authority. They really respect. Faal Mame Kinte really respected his lord. You know what I mean? I like this cousin brotherhood. In fact, that's what I always.
They might have been telling you.
I quoted this. I quote this experience very often in my class at the university. Especially when the Badibunka kids try to tease me now, students. Hey, Tilbunka Keba, Tilbunka Karanoma. And I joke about it's a very nice.
I'm trying to bring.
It's a very nice.
I'm trying to see the build up into your professional career. Your choice of study later on in life. Perhaps to see whether there is any link. Yes, could that have motivated you to become what you actually became?
Yes, I think so. You see, now
before you go into that,
okay, you
got a standard 7.
You have not landed yet.
Yes, we have not landed. Standard 7. What you did the O level. Private. You passed. What were your initial fears when your father said, I couldn't go beyond this point?
Yeah, well,
I can't afford to pay your school fees?
I was very unhappy. I was miserable. But I understood. Because I knew that he really meant to help, but he could definitely not.
Yes, I understand that, but what were your initial feelings?
Oh, I felt very unhappy. I felt very unhappy. But at the same time, it was a kind of reverse psychology for me.
Oh, yeah?
Because I understood there
were unintended results.
Yes.
Positive for that matter.
Positive. Okay. Reversed. Instead of being depressed and discouraged and giving up, something reversed it into me. In fact, now I know, having studied psychology, that reverse psychology can be very helpful. By that I mean, a negative experience or an undesirable experience, you can, in other words, you take challenges as opportunities, as we say now. It was a challenge that I could not. So I took it as an opportunity.
In other words,
I became more determined.
Positive mental attitude.
Yeah, I'm an optimist. And maybe my self-esteem is so high, maybe, that I took it as an opportunity and I was determined. I said to myself, exactly what has been ringing in my mind and my heart. Hey, my other friends whose parents could afford are now in high school, and I know that I can do it, but I don't have the opportunity, so I'm going to do it in another way. So I went, like several others did, I did the O levels, and then I struggled to go to Unum College, and that was the spark. When I went to the college, at that time, if you came from standard 7, with a standard 7 certificate, you would go to...
This was in the 60s?
This was in the 60s, what we call the primary class. The primary class. You'll be trained as a primary school teacher. And those who came from Gambia High School, St. Augustine's Armitage, they finished from 5 and they had their O levels or Cambridge, would automatically go to what they call the intermediate class.